Can Michigan do it again? Of course they could do it again. The Wolverines are, according to our friends at FanDuel, a 9.5-point home underdog to Ohio State. And yes, I think Ohio State's going to win the game. Yes, I will be surprised if Michigan wins. My level of surprise on a scale of 1 to last year would be a 2. It would be a 2. Michigan has quietly started playing some really good football. Offense got in a rhythm against Maryland last week for whatever that is worth. The Wolverines have started to get themselves going. They've started to get Bryce Underwood going, throwing the ball in the last couple of weeks, which as a true freshman, you'd expect, and frankly, as a Michigan fan, you'd probably hope to see, because you want to see your players getting developed over the course of the year and over the course of their careers. And I've been bullish on Bryce Underwood for a long time. The term coming out party in football is one that is applicable in this game in a way. I think most of the country knows about Bryce Underwood, but Bryce Underwood can make himself a Michigan legend if he wins this game. Make no mistake about it. If Michigan wins this game, you will hear me, and I think the committee as well, lobby for the Wolverines to make the college football playoff. They could still make the Big Ten championship game in the right scenario, because remember, one of their losses was to USC earlier this year. One of their other losses, the only other loss, was to Oklahoma on the road. So when you look at the Wolverines' resume, are there a bunch of great wins? No, there are not. But the term quality loss gets thrown around a lot down in SEC country. Notre Dame is a great example of this. Quality losses. Okay. The 2 losses Michigan has, Oklahoma, top 10. USC, probably top 20, at least top 25. Where's the ugly loss? There is no horrible, there's no Florida State beating Alabama. There is no unranked loss. None of that. Do they have a bunch of great wins? No, but they don't have any really bad losses. And if you then added in arguably the best win in college football this year, I think Indiana going to Oregon was really, really good. Notre Dame, or Texas A&M going to Notre Dame, also really good. But if Michigan beats number 1 undefeated Ohio State again, I mean, I don't even want to think about what would happen in the great city of Columbus, Ohio. We'll just save that thought potentially for another day. They're in the playoff no matter what. They could lose this game, go win the national championship game again. That's an interesting trade-off. If you're an Ohio State fan, would you rather beat Michigan, not win the national championship, or lose to Michigan again and then go win a second straight national championship? I'm genuinely curious what that particular response would be. But Ohio State is a really good football team, and I'm not in the camp of what has Ohio State done and their resume is this and blah, blah. Yeah, I'm not there. I've watched the football games. I know Ohio State's really good. If Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate come back in this game, and I suspect that they will and hope that they will, because I wouldn't want there to be anything in this game other than every team having its best players. If that happens and then Bryce Underwood beats Ohio State, you will see a 2-year hype train for a Michigan quarterback, the likes of which I just don't think we've seen before. And he won't ever put up massive numbers because he's in Michigan's offense, and that's okay. But this would be, as a true freshman with a playoff spot on the line, you cement yourself as an instant legend in Ann Arbor. And you don't even have to go win the national championship in your career. That moment could just stand as, remember that time you had to win to get into the playoff, which I think they should have to do. 9-3 Michigan's not getting in. I don't think a single 3-loss team is making the playoff, and I'm here for it. I'm very, very here for it. So, can Michigan do it? Yes. I think they're capable. Confidence boost after last week, playing at home, and you just can't ever overlook the rivalry factor. I don't usually make picks this early in the week, but there are a lot of games to pick, and I do think Ohio State's winning this one. But will I swallow the points in a rivalry game? Absolutely not. 9.5, according to our friends at FanDuel. Give me Ohio State 27, Michigan 23. They find a way. So Vanderbilt goes to Tennessee. Vanderbilt's the higher-ranked team. Tennessee is, according to Vegas, the better team. That's just according to our friends at FanDuel. because they've got this at Tennessee -2.5. This game is in Knoxville. Now, Vanderbilt is in a really difficult spot because the Commodores, we'll see where they wind up with their college football playoff ranking later tonight. The Commodores could go 10-2 in the SEC, which on the surface, at a glance, without any context or details or anything like that, puts you in the college football playoff. If you'd asked me before the year or anybody else, based on the 1 year of 12-team data that we've got, no, 10-2 SEC gets you in. Vanderbilt could win this game and miss the playoff. That's entirely realistic. I think they're fighting helmet bias, and I think they're fighting the fact that they've lost their biggest games of the season. They've beaten the living daylights out of some others. Just ask Kentucky last week, who, think whatever you want of Kentucky. But hey, Vanderbilt played like a playoff team last week against a vastly inferior opponent. This is true. This is very true. And when Vanderbilt played Texas, they only ended up losing by 3, but they also trailed by 24 points and then had a 21-0 fourth quarter. That counts. Does the committee see it that way? I don't know. But I think Vanderbilt is fighting an uphill perception battle. They could really use to ensure they get in at 10-2, not just a win in this game, but go to Knoxville and win by 10 or more. You do that, that's going to be hard to ignore. But is Tennessee going to get it done? I'm holding off on this one. I'm holding off. This is not a microwave pick like Ohio State, Michigan. This is a crock pot pick. This one's got to simmer. It's low. You're making pork shoulder. Okay, can't do that in a couple minutes. That's what that pick is. But Vandy at Tennessee, interesting playoff implications there. And then, oh man, the good old ACC. If you missed my segment on Monday's show about the ACC championship game scenarios, let me tell you, I've never had another segment like that, where I almost, even though I was reading information of different scenarios, I was almost confusing myself. I bet I threw some of you for a loop. That's probably the most repeated segment for people's consumption on this very program in the history of Locked On College Football. I don't think there's ever one where people went back more and said, I got to hear that again. Miami gets in with what? SMU gets in with... has to get in with a win. And oh, by the way, in case you ever thought for some reason that I planned these shows coincidentally or by accident, I do not. Here's Cal. Here's Cal's chance for Nick Rolovich, interim head coach, to make a statement is a one-game sample size with 2 previous successful on-field results at Hawaii and at Washington State. Would a one-game sample size beating SMU in the midst of a return trip to the college football playoff push, would that be enough for Cal to say, all right, we got to hire Nick Rolovich as a head coach? That's pretty small. That's a pretty small sample size. Very small. The smallest, some would say. But maybe they'd watch the bowl game too and see what happens with the Bears. SMU's got to go all the way to Berkeley. They're a 10.5-point favorite according to our friends at FanDuel. I think SMU's more driven. I think the chaos can certainly make this interesting. SMU's a better football team top to bottom since the early losses to Big 12 schools to kind of begin the season. They have really rebounded. They have settled in. I'll take SMU, go on the road and win. But JKS puts up some points, finds a way to cover. 30-24. I'll take SMU over the Bears.